Hey everybody, Chad Andrus back with you behind the camera today because I've caught up with two of the best basketball minds you're going to find in Denver or really anywhere, from DenverStiffs.com and the Locked On Nuggets podcast, Adam Morris in the NC State shirt, and then the author of Chasing Perfection, Andy Glockner, cheering on his Penn alma mater today. As the tournament has started, guys, what I want to pick your brains about as two guys who have not only watched extensively and in-depth, but really covered NBA basketball over the years, kind of the differences in the way you cover and watch the NBA and its players, and then the way you watch and approach viewing the tournament when it starts. Like, is it a different way of watching the game just because of the brackets alone? I mean, or do you take a different approach when you're viewing something like, Adam, the way you watch a Nuggets game critically to write and podcast about it to the way you watch a tournament game?
For me, it's completely different. I watched NBA basketball for love of the game of basketball, and that's why there's not a lot of parity in the NBA relative to some other professional sports. But for me, it doesn't matter, because I find NBA basketball so fascinating. The skill level, the execution, the storylines, all that stuff. For college, for me at least, the basketball I think is significantly less interesting. But what is more interesting is anybody can win in a one-and-done tournament. So I'm watching purely the competition and who's going to win, the outcome. And the basketball is completely secondary. They could almost be playing badminton, and I'd be watching.
It's interesting. Excuse me, gosh, your take was so hot.
Spicy one.
Yeah. As a longtime college basketball writer, before I went and worked on my book and got more back into the NBA, my perspective was almost rising up. I didn't have as much of an appreciation for how elite the NBA product is, and frankly, how different it is. Yeah. You're not really watching college basketball for execution, but there are also a very small handful of guys that can execute at the NBA level, at the college level. So when you're looking at the college game, like you said, there's a little bit of a proprietary, a provinciality of it, my school, all that kind of stuff. It's almost a different sport. I think if you watch it that way, that's a good appreciation. And then on the side, you look at it from a scouting standpoint and try to see who can, potentially rise up and play at the pro level.
The scouting part's for sure. That's definitely secondary to everything else.
Well, the NBA, I think, has such an interesting sweet spot because so many people are invested in the youth of the league and their potential and what they could be. And those guys are, I guess, by definition of how many people pay attention to them and buy their shoes and their products, they're stars, but they're not the ones winning the championships. The veteran teams and the established superstars win the championships, but you still have guys that come into the league and people know what they're going to be, so they kind of get pre-branded in this way. So when you start watching a college tournament, particularly about the players and the scouting element, how much are you watching a guy, if it's DeAndre Ayton for Arizona or Marvin Bagley for Duke, are you watching them to how they're helping their team advance in the tournament and looking at them as like, oh, this guy would be a perfect fit if you insert him into this lineup in the NBA next year?
To me, it's more the latter. Like, I want to see a guy of that caliber, a top 5 potential pick, be able to carry a college team. Put him on his back, put up a 30-15, show that you are better than this level. But those numbers, and we talked a little bit before we filmed this about Derek Williams or Michael Beasley, guys that put up very, very big college numbers that I personally had a lot of concerns about translating their skills to the next level. So there has to be either a physical dominance, a size, a strength, a touch, or some skill that is actually, you could see, okay, he's going to be able to do this as a pro, and then maybe build around that. There are very few people, I mean, we talked about, the teams that win the title or LeBron or, the super team out in the Bay, but there are guys below that. I mean, there's obviously nothing wrong with the Karl-Anthony Towns. There's nothing wrong with the Greek Freak. It's just not their time yet from a team standpoint.
Right.
Give me 5 more years. Those are the guys that are going to be winning the titles. The question is, where do you find them in the pipeline, and how do you, obviously, Giannis is a fluke, right, of massive proportions, and was the 15th pick. But when you're looking at the college game, and you mentioned Ayton and other guys like this, I mean, you could look at an Ayton and see the tangible skill and the intangibles that you can't coach, the size, the feel, the footwork, the athleticism. So yeah, you do think that will translate, and then you start to look at, well, what can he specifically do at an NBA level right now, and what's the trajectory on the stuff that he can't do? You look at an Embiid in the same way.
Yeah. I think for me with the tournament specifically, and this actually goes with all of my scouting, the NBA draft is 3-4 months away. It's quite a ways. We got a lot of time. Whenever I watch a player for the first time, or even when I'm watching a team, the first viewing, I'm always taking it in a big 10,000-foot view, because tonight you want to see a guy like Trae Young, for example, not necessarily break down all the specifics of what he does, but what's his presence like? What's his confidence like? How does he run the team and all of those types of things? Later on in the years, we get closer to the draft, I'll go back. There's a lot of tools online to really get into the weeds and really break down the film, and that's where I get more detailed analysis. So today, I'm having fun. I'm watching the games and enjoying myself, and I'm kind of taking in the big picture stuff.
One more before we get back to the bracket action on the games behind you. The stars in college basketball are coaches. Yeah. And it's a different story. When you watch, obviously there's the Coach K's, the Izzos, the established coaches of the world and what they do, and they have proven methods for success. But how else do you watch teams play if you're looking at a bracket and a potential upset and you know kind of what a coach likes to do or what a coach's history has done? How much interest do you have when you're watching the tournament in the coaching styles and how much effect they can have on the game?
I'll go first because this is easy for me. I'm not a college basketball pro. This is usually my first introduction to college basketball. So for those things, I'm much less invested in that regard. So it's a smaller portion for me.
I would say the same. I mean, I'm not watching because I really care about John Calipari's dribble drive motion,
right,
or Tony Bennett's pack line defense. Teams have an identity. Sometimes you latch onto a team because they're really fun, or they're really sound, or they're five guys that make each other better.
Yeah.
I like the Wichita State teams of the last few years. A lot of toughness,
some of my favorites.
A lot of shooting. Now you see Fred VanVleet and
Yeah.
Ron Baker, even Clay Anthony Early.
Actual NBA players.
Actual NBA players coming out of Wichita State. But they were a fun team to watch because you knew, like, every night, you were going to get a first-class performance from them. The effort was going to be there. The skill was going to be there. And one year they went into the tournament unbeaten. It was a great story. But beyond that, I don't get obsessed with college coaching because, frankly, like, the teams with the better players are going to win most of the time. It's just the way it is.
All right, check out Adam's coverage, denverstiffs.com, and the Locked On Nuggets podcast for their run down the stretch, pushing for the playoffs. Andy, tell everybody where they can still pick up your book, Chasing Perfection.
Easiest is online for sure. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you order your books online. It might still be in some of the bookstores in town, but it came out a couple years ago at this point, so probably easier to find online. But appreciate the plug.
Yeah, still a very good read, especially if you want to get into the numbers and the analytic breakdown of how NBA teams run their organizations. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.